Fifth graders, we're going to continue our reading of A Tangle of Knots. I'm going to read the next three chapters, chapters 42, 43, and 44. So we're on chapter 42, and it's titled V. V couldn't quite say what had compelled her to leap into the back of that truck. Not that she could say much of anything. She didn't know where the chameleon was going, or what she planned on doing when she came face to shifting face with him. Perhaps this chameleon was nothing like the one who had charmed her Caroline right out from underneath her. Perhaps Caroline hadn't needed much charming to begin with. But what if V could have stopped it all if she'd only said something? What if by exposing this chameleon, V could stop a similar mother from experiencing a similar heartache? She had to try. V smoothed her hand over the photograph she'd ripped from the book. The faces tinted lightly brown from the sun shining through the tarp above. 3 people working on an archaeological dig in the blazing sun, smiling together for the camera. The mother, the father, a baby girl. V clutched the photograph to her chest with one hand, sloughing her way out from under the tarp with the other. She lifted herself from the truck bed and did her best to take in her surroundings. The convention center. The chameleon had driven them to the convention center in New York City. V knew the towering glass building well. She'd given many talks here in her time. V followed the stream of visitors in chef's hats and colored aprons, some toting cake pans under their arms, others simply fidgeting nervously. V snuck her way through the side entrance, past a greasy-haired young gentleman pushing an enormous barrel of flour. The man was too engrossed in his book to notice her entrance, which V supposed she should take as a compliment. She steadied herself, taking one last look at the photograph for courage. Then, bumping only slightly against the flour barrel as she nudged past, V made her way inside. She did not at that moment realize that she dropped the photograph. Chapter 43, Mrs. Asher. What Dolores had been hoping for when she rolled down the window was a breath of fresh air, a bit of a country breeze to help clear her head as she continued down the highway. What she got was a face full of ferret. Ah! Dolores screeched, swerving as she struggled with the furry blob that had attached itself to her nose. She finally managed to pull to the side of the road and wrestle the critter to her lap. Sally, she cried, willing her heart to slow to only 300 beats per second. Where on earth did you scared me have to? Oh, Sally. Dolores' voice softened as the ferret curled into a frightened, hairy ball and sniffled a sad sort of sniffle. You miss him too, don't you? Click, click, clack, Sally replied. Dolores scratched at the scruff of Sally's neck. Where in the world could that boy be? I bet you'd know. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Since you and Will are always going on all those Dolores stopped talking. Slowly, with one hand still around the ferret in her lap, she returned her foot to the gas pedal and eased back onto the highway. This is chapter 44, Zane. It was a curious sensation being hit by an oncoming car while flying backward on a bicycle. Somehow thrilling and terrifying both at once, like a roller coaster but without a safety bar. The part after the collision, where Zane flew feet over face past his handlebars and thwacked headfirst into the dirt, that wasn't thrilling at all. There was a screech of tires and the slam of a car door. You darn kids, came a voice behind him. Marigold rushed to Zane, picking his head out of the dirt. Oh, Zane, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Zane was not okay. His whole head throbbed. His palms were burning. He wondered if he might have broken an ankle. You darn kids, came the voice again. The owner. Move this mess now. As Zane did his best to rub the sting out of the back of his neck, Marigold stood her full height, hands on her hips. You hit my brother, she screeched. Dozens of squirrels, Zane noticed as his vision began to clear, had leapt out from the trees, and they were swarming into the road in order to... Actually, what were they doing? Zane craned his neck ever so slightly, pins and needles soaring up his spine as he did so, to take in the scene. A mangled bicycle, 4 suitcases burst open in the dirt, cameras, wallets, belt buckles, and jars. There were jars everywhere, scattered across the road, broken and cracked and slivered, every last one. And rising up from the shards of each broken jar, Zane blinked when he saw it, was a fine sort of mist, a gray haze that swirled up into the sky, slowly at first, then swaying slightly with the breeze until it funneled up into the clouds. Yut, yut! The squirrels seemed fascinating, digging their curious faces right down into the broken glass to sniff. Yut, 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 yut. The owner had noticed the mess too, and he wasn't as happy about it as the squirrels. You darn kids, he screamed again. His face was purple, veins bulging in his forehead. With 2 burly hands, he lifted the twisted heap of a bicycle off the ground and threw it into the bushes. A pedal caught Marigold in the cheek, and she squawked in surprise. in surprise, slapping her hand to cover it. But Zane had already seen the blood forming. You leave my sister alone, he howled, rising, teetering to his feet. Zane's ankle wailed at him to stay still. His hands hollered, his knees shrieked, but Zane didn't listen. He lunged at the owner, sending the squirrels chittering in all directions. Things became a bit of a blur after that. Maybe it was because Zane was in so much pain that he found it hard to follow the events that unfolded right in front of him. But what seemed to happen, although it couldn't be what really happened because it was all too peculiar to be true, was that something in the owner's pocket let out a soft plunk, like a pebble being tossed to the floor, and the owner suddenly shrunk 2 inches, and then without warning, there was a sharp chill in Zane's forehead. He couldn't tell if it lasted a moment or a lifetime, but it was cold. And then all at once, the owner shoved Zane back into the dirt. In the owner's hand was a small rock of ice. End of the chapter. Have a great day.